I wanted to bring this debate to your attention because the objection that's raised by the audience member is a really good objection. And not a good objection in the sense that it was really clever and required critical thinking, but a good objection in the sense that it gives Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk a complete layup opportunity to smash this mainstream media narrative out of the park.
Boy, this...
Hey.
Hi, so I have a disagreement with your guys' take in Ukraine. As I understand it, your position is that, you know, it's really expensive, we shouldn't be sending all this money, and it's also none of our business, right? I disagree with that because, one, I think it's morally right, but also, even from a national interest standpoint, right? That money, you know, the Ukrainians have definitely done a lot, but that money has helped them embarrass Russia on a national stage, right? Like before, we believed that they were a big power, and now they've embarrassed themselves. And also, I think that Western solidarity is really important, right? I mean, like, especially with China eyeing Taiwan, we need to show them internationally that we're a solidified force. They can't just go and take it. We need to show that we can defend.
So we're spending trillions of dollars to embarrass Russia? That's like a little bit of embarrassment? Is that what we're trying to do? You think that we should be recycling millions of dollars and having millions of dollars disappear into thin air so that we can say, ooh, look, Vladimir Putin is embarrassed. And if by embarrassed you mean shaking hands with Xi Jinping, talking about how things are going to change and that the next 100 years are not going to look like the last 100 years, then you are not paying attention to what is going on. We have just pushed Vladimir Putin into the arms of China, right? One of our the greatest competitor that we possibly have is China. They're shaking hands. They're openly mocking the West. This has never happened before, right? They think the West is a joke, and why shouldn't they? Look at us. We're having debates about gender. We don't know what a woman is, okay? Hollywood, we think that it's cool to have Zelensky make attendances at the Grammys. It's a joke. It's a complete and utter joke. So no, first and foremost, we talked about national interest. National interest require that it was in our nation or it impacted us. It's not my effing business what happens in the Eastern Corridor while we have real Americans that are suffering today. And if you notice, it's been non-stop wars that we haven't lost. You want to talk about embarrassment? Try leaving billions of dollars of technology in Afghanistan after spending decades fighting. That's embarrassment. That's embarrassment. What's embarrassing is China then flying immediately after we magically evacuate and meeting with the Taliban and immediately recognizing them as a government. We had daughters and our sons that died. What did we win? What about those weapons of mass destruction? Was this the 20th anniversary of Iraq? You want to talk about embarrassment? The things that we did in Iraq, the things that we've done all across the world, and for what? What do you have to show for it? Well, I guess we embarrassed a few people while we were sending Americans over to die. At least we were able to embarrass a few people in the process. That's not a good way to think. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not a good way to think. We should think about prioritizing all of the issues that we have in America. You want to talk about an invasion? Let's talk about the one that's happening at our border every single day. That's what we mean when we say America first, okay? We have plenty of issues to solve. Not a single red cent should be sent overseas until we fix what's happening here in the United States.
I can't speak about this in too much detail, obviously, because YouTube will censor me even more, which, guys, by the way, if you've been watching this channel, you might have seen that my numbers have dropped off hugely recently. And that's because YouTube has completely stopped recommending my content. It literally happened just overnight a few weeks ago. So if you enjoy this content, make sure you've got that notification bell on and you're subscribed, or else you might not see it anymore. But back to the point, we hear a lot about brainwashing these days. We see how the people of North Korea are brainwashed and how ideas can take a hold of people. And one of the greatest examples of brainwashed people in the world, in my opinion, is people in the West. The Rona was a perfect example of this, and now the Ukraine war is the latest example of this. Most people, when speaking about this topic, will be under the impression that Ukraine was some peaceful, harmonious democracy that was united under the leadership of hero Zelensky. Their courageous and fearless leader, and that Putin is just some war lunatic that has gone crazy and has his back up against the wall. And furthermore, that he's being embarrassed on the world stage, and that at any moment he might just push that nuke button in some sort of unhinged move of desperation. The message is that Putin and Russia are being severely humiliated. And because of the courageous fighting spirit of the Ukrainians, aided by all of the help and aid given by Western and NATO countries, the little guy is winning. The underdog is winning. A modern day story of David and Goliath, if you will. The world is unified in their benevolent cause of fighting against Big Bad Vlad. And obviously if you do your research into it, then you'll soon realize that that's not completely the case. So I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. Maybe on my Locals channel or Rumble I will at some point. But what I will say is this. When you start to see a narrative pattern emerging, especially when it comes from mainstream media outlets, look upon that narrative with extreme and meticulous skepticism, because normally the narrative that you are being fed is not an organic narrative, but rather a contrived one that suits the interests of certain power structures. And if you guys want to learn more about this, then a podcast that I listen to pretty much every day is called The Duran. And these guys are geopolitical analysts that do a great job of discussing the narrative that the mainstream media will not discuss with you. Now more on the topic of the US being laughed at on the world stage.
I'll add one thing. Just Candace makes a fabulous point that needs to be repeated and repeated. A country that cannot determine what a woman is should not go to war.
How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
Now, this is a general rule for conflict. If you have a domestic crisis where you are not able to agree on basic truths, you are not a nation ready to go forward.
China's writing articles, their newspapers, they're literally writing articles mocking America about how we don't know what bathroom to go into, right? About how we sent the full force of the military to shoot down a Hobby Lobby balloon. Right? If you think that the embarrassment that Russia is embarrassed, you haven't been paying attention to what's happening in America. Honestly, we become a mock. We're being mocked in the eastern corridor.
And I'll go even a step further. It's a tragic geopolitical mistake that Russia is not neutral, it's not an ally with us against the Chinese Communist Party. All this saber rattling that it's the Cold War and Russia against us. It didn't have to be this way. Donald Trump
Cold War hangover. It's Cold War hangover.
Donald Trump had it in the right position. The Chinese Communist Party is the great threat against the West and American liberty, and now they have a gas station. The Chinese Communist Party now has more oil reserves than they know what to do with in a great super alliance that we helped create.
Please study the pipelines. Really understand. This is not about scoring points. This is not about running an article on CNN and Washington Post saying, "Oh, look, we embarrassed." You need to study the map of the pipelines and understand exactly what he is talking about when he is saying the threat of an alliance between Russia and China. They don't care about some points on the board saying, "Oh, look, it's so serious. We are in such a severe state right now." When I say it is managed social decline, managed political decline, we are no longer being taken seriously on the world stage. When I watched, I think it was Russia Today, a clip that my executive producers pulled of them openly laughing and mocking the American military, unfathomable even 4 years ago when Trump was in office. Unfathomable. They're openly mocking us. They don't take the West seriously, because why should we be taken seriously? We're arguing over bathroom signs over here.
Now, in terms of embarrassment, we hear a lot these days about how Putin is being embarrassed, like we said earlier in the video. But the truth is that woke America is the laughingstock of much of the rest of the world. The cultural decline is just obvious and in your face at the moment of these Western countries. And just like me, and probably like yourself as well if you're watching this channel, the rest of the world is looking at geriatric sleepy Joe Biden.
My name is Joe Biden. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream.
And cackling Kamala Harris.
Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right?
As the incompetent fools that they are. They are looking at what is happening in our culture and they're finding it, yes, laughable, but in the more extreme cases, demonic. And can you really blame them for that? And just to prove that, I'm going to show some of the rhetoric from other countries about America. The Taliban themselves have also released videos of them gloating about all of the new billions of dollars of weapons and defense products that were left behind. And here's a skit done by Saudi Arabian TV about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Thank you very much. Today, we're going to talk about the crisis in Spain. Yeah, we're going to talk about the crisis in Africa. Yeah, Russia. The message is and the president of China.
I didn't know the Saudi Arabians had jokes like that, and they're certainly not a million miles from the truth. And furthermore, here are some of the things that Putin has to say about the woke Western culture.
Глядя на происходящее в ряде западных стран, мы с изумлением узнаем отечественные практики, которые сами, к счастью, оставили, надеюсь, в далеком прошлом. Борьба за равноправие и против дискриминации превращается в агрессивный догматизм на грани абсурда, когда великих авторов прошлого, того же Шекспира, перестают преподавать в школах и университетах, потому что они, эти идеи, являются, как там считают, отсталыми. Классики объявляются отсталыми, не понимающими важности гендерного или расового вопроса.
Now, needless to say, I'm not necessarily on one side or the other. I tend to think that the answer with these sort of things normally resides somewhere in the middle. But those are just the facts about how the rest of the world feels about the United States and the Western world. And it's important to note that in previous decades, this probably wouldn't have happened. But the fact that they're so happy to do it now probably shows that they're not as intimidated by the West and that America is not the power that it once used to be. So basically, guys, in a nutshell, not all is always as it seems. And it's good to hear many different perspectives on these extremely complicated ideas such as geopolitics. But luckily, guys, with legacy media brands on the way out, in comes the new and more reliable sources of news. And that's why I turn to Ground News. So guys, Ground News is a website and an app that gathers all of the world's media in one place from 50,000 sources around the world so that you can compare coverage. They allow you to see the story behind the story using data-driven analysis that looks at things like political bias, reliability, and ownership of news outlets. And when you click on the stories, you'll be able to see on the right data on how the story is being covered by the media. They also have the article comparison feature, which allows you to see how this specific story is being reported on from left, center, and right. And as usual, guys, if you want to reach out to me on social media, feel free to do so. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video if you want to help me with my censorship. And if you want to watch another video, click right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.